I'm Eric Barnes with the Daily Memphian, and welcome to The Sidebar, a weekly show on the community, arts, culture, and more. Today, we're very pleased to be talking to Lauren Kennedy, owner and director of the art gallery Sheet Cake. So stay with us for a conversation with Lauren. And of course, a special thanks to our sponsor of The Sidebar, Treasement Manor. Lauren, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Frequent listeners to Sidebar will know that there's been a few mix-ups, very much on my end. You then had to cancel, so that we previewed this like 19 times. But
well, hopefully that means people are just really, really ready to hear about everything we have to talk about.
So many people know you from, 8 years at UrbanArt Commission?
Right.
We had the new head of UrbanArt Commission, Lakeisha Edwards, on a month or two ago, and people can get that. But, and I should also say, because I'm sure people can hear the music, that we're in Crosstown on the 10th floor in the atrium, and we've enlisted a small quartet, a string quartet, as background music for this entire interview. So that's going to be awesome.
I appreciate that extra thought that you guys went to for that.
Right. That was part of the reason we kept having to reschedule, is we couldn't get the quartet here. It was terrible. But I want to come back and talk about urban art and like the progression in your whole sort of the world of art and you, but talk about Sheet Cake for people who don't know what it is.
Yeah. Sheet Cake is a contemporary art gallery. We opened December 1st. The focus of the gallery is kind of this loose regional connection, so artists based in and connected to the regional South. And I paint that loosely because there are people that I'm working with who grew up in Memphis or another southern city and are living in New York or elsewhere now. And I think that when you're from a place like the South, it leaves an imprint, and I like to continue to keep those people in the fold. And then within that, also really intentionally celebrating women artists, queer artists, and artists of color.
Yeah. And the gallery is where?
405 Monroe Avenue, right across from the old Wonder Bread building. So Monroe and Danny Thomas.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Down the street from where Edge Alley was.
Yes.
May they rest in peace.
Yes.
I miss it immensely every single weekend.
No joke.
Yeah. So why an art gallery?
You know, art has always been my focus. Specifically, contemporary art is really where I've always wanted to work. I love being able to help artists get their work seen, find opportunities for them to grow it, show it, sell it, get paid. And, you know, as somebody who's been part of the art and culture scene here for a long time in Memphis, you know, I think I was one of many people who felt like we needed more gallery spaces in town. For it to be the size that we are and to have the breadth of creative talent here, you know, there aren't just a ton of spaces where you can go and see art on the regular. And, you know, I think I also feel really committed to trying to situate Memphis more prominently in national conversations around art. You know, I think we do it to ourselves, but also it's done to us, that we kind of get whittled down to this version of Memphis that's blues, barbecue, and Elvis.
Yeah. Right.
And like, those things are great. You know, I'm the first to recommend Cozy Corner to anybody coming to town, or Payne's or something, but we're more than that too. And I just really care a lot about trying to highlight what else is going on here. And for me, an art gallery is, I think, the best way for me to contribute in that way.
Are you from Memphis?
Not originally. I grew up in Little Rock.
Okay.
And then I came here to go to school at Rhodes.
Okay.
Worked in Dallas for a bit and have been back since 2012. Yeah.
More questions here with Lauren Kennedy in a second, but it is Pledge Week for WYXR. This podcast, if you listen on Daily Memphian, it also airs on WYXR every Thursday at 11:30, WYXR 91.7, or you can go to wyxr.org, or you can download the WYXR app. They've got a mix of mostly music, but also other talk shows, some from Daily Memphian, for other publications and people in Memphis. And it is nonprofit, listener-supported radio. So go to wyxr.org or the app and donate what you can. It's listener-supported radio. Pledge Week we do twice a year, and it's obviously very, very important to supporting the organization. If you can become a member, that's even better. There's all kinds of benefits that you get, and you get a Daily Memphian subscription. You get all kinds of cool swag. You get other kinds of benefits. You can learn all about that at wyxr.org. And again, try to support the station during Pledge Week. But coming back to Lauren Kennedy for Sheet Cake, do I say Sheet Cake Gallery or do I just say Sheet Cake? How do I?
I'm good with both.
You're good with both.
I'm good with both.
I want to not screw it up. The decision to focus on women and folks underrepresented, I guess, was the whole goal there.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we just know art, like every other industry, there are large groups of people who have been historically underrepresented, haven't had access to opportunities and platforms. And that's something that means a lot to me, to use whatever platform I have to uplift those voices that that maybe haven't been heard yet or haven't been heard from enough. And so I'm really excited to be working with a really wide array of folks from in Memphis and outside of Memphis, who are kind of fitting in these categories in different ways. And, I think it's also important for people who are coming to the gallery to see different experiences, and people's perspectives reflected on the walls in a way that makes them feel like, oh, this is a space for me. So it's both about the artists that I'm supporting and about the people that I want to come in and feel welcome.
Name some of the artists who maybe the exhibits you've had or you've got going on right now and coming up. Talk through some of them.
Yeah, we opened this year with a really great 2-person show from Joel Parsons, who's a professor and at Rhodes College, runs the gallery there, and an artist, and Claire Tarina, who's from Memphis, or grew up in Memphis rather, and has been in New York for a long time now. Have an incredible solo show from Roger Allen Cleaves, native Memphian, got his undergrad degree at the University of Memphis. That's up until April 27th. And then we've got Erin Harmon and Kangwee Pang opening May 10th. Erin is also a professor at Rhodes, and Kangwee people probably know from her incredible design work around town, public art projects. But I think her fine art hasn't gotten as much space and celebration, so I'm excited to be working with her in this way too. And then more great people coming up later this year. Stephanie Howard from South Carolina, Cara Woods from Memphis. It's a good lineup of people that I'm really excited about having in the space.
How do you choose? I mean, it's a dumb question, but it's really, it's a city filled with really interesting artists and really interesting folks. The definite, the kind of group you're after is, while it's specific, it's a big group, right?
Yeah.
So how do you go about figuring out these are the people whose work I want to show?
Yeah, well, when I first started putting the bones of the gallery together, I went through and thought about the artists that I know in Memphis that are not represented by galleries or showing locally. And I came up with this kind of wild list of like 14 people really easily. And there were a handful of those that were very much on my heart as I put this whole thing together. Like I knew I wanted to work with these folks. And then I also did some research online and looking around at other galleries and programs that I think are really strong, and ended up reaching out to a number of people from Atlanta to Houston to New York and Berlin even. So I think at the end of the day, what's important to me about the artists that I'm working with is that I am drawn to their work. It's a big shift for me that I have very much welcomed from that time at the UrbanArt Commission, where everything was driven by committee and these, very intentionally and helpful conversations with people who are coming at the work from a lot of different ways. But in this space, I get to just lean into my gut, which is really exciting. So I would say, in general, there's a mix of painting, sculpture, ceramic, fiber. The artists are covering a lot of different materials, but the work in general is something that I feel really drawn to. A lot of people are playing with like a humor or warmth that I find really nice to spend time with. I'm just really interested in people who are playing with materials in kind of a funky way. The couple of artists that I'm working with like to treat the frames like as part of the entire piece, which feels really great.
I love that. And I don't know this is one of my things. I love museums. I love art. I do my long story of my friend who's runs the High Museum in Atlanta. So he's a
phenomenal museum.
Don't tell him I said it, but he's a big deal in the world of art museums. And he had always said to me, if you like something, just buy it. Like, unless you think you're collecting. And he was like, Eric, you're not. And it's just like when we both still had student loans, so it definitely wasn't. But he's like, if you like it, buy it. Like, don't think so hard about it.
Yes.
So I like to do that. And moving forward back to this little thing you highlighted about the frames.
Yes.
That's such an interesting, I love that, but I don't even know why or what that's called or what about that. I've never even thought about how I like that.
It just, it makes the piece feel really special for some reason. I mean, framing can be such a personal choice. Like, that's one thing that I've actually found being kind of intimidating that I didn't expect is when I'm making framing decisions for somebody that I don't know what their house looks like or what their vibe is.
Yeah.
So I really like when the artist is driving that, because then it, I don't know, in a lot of ways it feels like the piece feels even more finished sometimes, or finished in a way that's got a lot of care and thought put into it.
Right.
It's an interesting way of working that I found that I really enjoy. But then, there's some people who their work's not framed, or, I've just installed some really wonderful quilt pieces, fiber pieces by Paula Kavorik at the James Lee House. So there are just lots of different ways to display it. There are lots of different ways to interact with it and feel about it. And I think what you said about just what your friend told you about just, if you are drawn to it, then just let that be what guides you. I think that that's really important.
Yeah.
I'm not as huge a proponent of thinking about buying art as an investment. I mean, there are people who are collecting at a level that's very real for them. And of course, it's incredible to see an artist's career trajectory take off, and to have one of those earlier works as you see somebody continuing to grow and get bigger. But I think more often than not, people who are coming in the gallery are like, this feels really good to go home and live with me. And I'm like, that's exactly what I want you to feel.
Right. We're here with Lauren Kennedy. Many people know her for years at the Urban Art Commission, but she opened her own gallery, Sheet Cake, in the Edge District, 405 Monroe, back in December.
Yes.
We'll come back and talk about all those things, a number of those things that you just brought up, but I want to remind everyone that it is Pledge Week for WYXR. It is nonprofit, listener-supported radio, and so please do support by going to WYXR.org or download the WYXR app. You can become a member, various levels, get all kinds of cool benefits, tickets to shows, swag, all kinds of stuff. Or you can just do a one-off donation. Anything you can do to support the radio station, not just this show by any means, but all the other talk shows and, of course, all the music shows and the events that they put on, often here in Crosstown, where we are playing Name That Tune. And I know every single song that the quartet is playing, but I can't identify them. But we had jazzy disco Beethoven. We had a Coldplay song. We had Hello by Lionel Richie. Who?
Livy and Rose.
Livy and Rose.
Yep.
Okay, I know that song. I just forgot about it. Anyway, so you can tweet me, and if you can identify the music in the background, that would be helpful. But again, this is The Sidebar. I'm Eric Barnes. The Sidebar airs on WYXR 91.7 every Thursday at 11:30. Focused on the community, arts, culture, everything in between. It's also one of many weekly podcasts we do at the Daily Memphian. You can get this podcast. You can get the Behind the Headlines podcast that we do with the folks at WKNO. You can get our Grizzlies podcast. You can get Sound Bites, our food podcast with Chris Harrington and Holly Whitfield. All those are on Daily Memphian, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And Sound Bites also airs on WYXR every Thursday at 11, right before the Sidebar. I talked about supporting WYXR during Pledge Week, but it's always Pledge Week at the Daily Memphian. I made that up. I thought that was pretty good. But we are a nonprofit newsroom and a 501c3 supported by our subscribers, our advertisers, and our supporters. So if you're not a paid subscriber to the Daily Memphian, look to become one. It supports the largest newsroom in the region, and we are looking to grow that newsroom. So please do think about supporting us. Coming up on the sidebar very soon is Vintage 901. They've got their big wine and food festival coming up. I think it's the weekend of April 20th. We talked to their founder next week on the sidebar. Recently, we had Nikisha Cole, who is the arts and culture liaison for the Shelby County government. It was a really interesting conversation, and her love for art. I don't know if you, Lauren, have ever met Nikisha.
Yeah.
Super interesting, and her childhood love of music and art, and how trying to kind of bring that and help Shelby County. They're not funding a whole lot at this point, but she's trying to facilitate and just try to make connections and lift up artists and arts organizations throughout the county. So that was really interesting. I mentioned Behind the Headlines that we do every Friday on WKNO with the good folks over at WKNO. We recently had Bill Hargrave, the U of M president, on. We had a number of folks from the police union on talking about crime and public safety and policing. And coming up very soon, we've got Robert Connect, who is the head. I've totally forgotten his title. He is Public Works Director, and I am unbelievably excited to talk about infrastructure with Robert Connect. You think I'm joking, but I'm not.
He's a good guy.
Is he? See, I've never
He's
met
a very
him.
good guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Or maybe I've shook his hand, but I don't think I've ever met him. So I'm looking. Oh, of course, Urban Art. You would have to have worked with him all the time.
Yeah, he was one of the people that would run into weird and wild situations, and I would call Robert and be like, "What? Who do I talk to?"
Yeah, we want to put a giant mural on a piece of concrete that's really close to the street.
Yeah,
whatever.
exactly.
Yeah. We're back here though with Lauren Kennedy, again, formerly of Urban Art and now of Sheet Cake, the art gallery. She's director and the owner, and started that in December. You mentioned the whole idea of representing.
Yes.
That I think I know what that means, but honestly, I kind of don't know what it means when a gallery is representing an artist. I don't think I know what that means.
Yeah, it's representational relationships with galleries essentially mean that the gallery is committing to supporting that artist in kind of a deeper, longer term relationship. So representation often means that you can expect to have a show really every couple of years with the gallery. They're going to be consistently trying to get your work in front of collectors and hopefully museums, other institutions, things like that. There's kind of more of an investment, I think, implied as in terms of the relationship.
Is it an exclusive relationship?
So people handle it differently, but generally speaking, it would be exclusive in the city where you're in.
Oh, okay.
You know, some galleries are, a little bit more tight-knit about those kinds of things, and maybe they'll be exclusive kind of full stop. But it kind of depends on the dynamics between the gallery and the artist.
And without, I don't want to get in anyone's business, but I do think it's interesting. I mean, so the gallery is going to take a percentage, I assume, of the sale. And this is in the weeds, but for that period of time when you have X person's art in Sheet Cake, is it not available anywhere else? Is that kind of what you're looking for? Is that what the partnership, the relationship that you have with the artist is, hey, for this month that we're showing you, it's exclusive to us everywhere or just in this city? Or is it not really that narrow a definition?
Well, no, I think that, I'm thinking about the works that are being shown at Sheet Cake specifically as those being really just accessible to Sheet Cake for at least a year or something. Because one thing that I'm finding is that this is a slow burn business. Somebody comes in, has a big reaction to a painting, say, but may take a few months before they actually come back in and say, okay, yes, I'm ready to do it. I'm either ready to make the leap financially, or I'm at a point in this renovation process where I can bring something in. So giving it time is really helpful for me as a person trying to find a good home for it to live in.
Yeah.
But I think I also don't ever want to hold an artist back from an opportunity. So if something came up and there was a group show that they got invited to be in, then I can coordinate with that gallery about it still coming through Sheet Cake, or maybe an artist just needs to take something back from consignment and it goes on and has a life outside of Sheet Cake.
And is it really consignment? I mean, I'm way in the weeds now, but.
So I'm currently doing everything through consignment with my artists that I'm working with. because it's still very fresh. It's still a whole new business. Some of these are very new relationships. And so I'll be kind of looking after I get through shows with people at who are the people that I will represent and kind of continue to work with, and who am I working with more in kind of a sometimes fashion, like having some new work in from the gallery, from time to time and that kind of thing.
We talked, we had Birdcap on, who I'm sure you worked with, UrbanArt, many murals around
Birdcap's
Memphis.
The best.
And he's got a show, I think it's still on maybe for another week or two at Crosstown
It's
Arts.
up through the end of the month, along with Kevin Brooks and Melissa Dunn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Birdcap was on a month, 6 weeks, two months ago. I have no sense of time. And it was interesting to talk about the financial part of it. And this notion, I'm going to do a very poor job paraphrasing him of, I think, this is me speaking. I think there are people who think it's maybe a little unseemly to talk about the money side of being an artist. And he had some joke about it. He goes, well, I really don't want to live on the street. And he was joking, but he wasn't joking, right?
Sure.
He's like, look, I do all kinds of things now. And he's built a worldwide reputation. And he does a certain amount of graphic, design for people. And he'll do commission pieces. And he's like, look, I was asking him, do they dictate what you do? And he said, well, at this point, people know what I do. Yeah. Maybe we kind of have a conversation, and then I go and do it. But also, I do commissions because, again, I want to eat and I want to live in a house.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think partly not to be intrusive of your business or the artists, but these artists, it's not just a passion. It's also hopefully it's a vocation that pays the bills and allows them, maybe they cobble together an income through. I mean, I've had a lot of musicians on the show talking about you cobble together between maybe you produce some work and maybe you teach some and then you do your own work and then you help with road, production with people. Jeff Coran from U of M is really a great articulates that really well. So anyway, I just find it interesting, like how people piece together a living as an artist, right?
Yeah. I mean, I would say probably, I want to say the majority of artists, because I think that would be true, are not working full time as an artist. Maybe they're juggling contract gigs, part-time things, working full-time jobs and doing art in between these other commitments. And, I think sometimes people, especially if they're new to buying art or commissioning an artist for a public project or something like that, there can be this kind of sticker shock value to putting a value on something, which I can appreciate when you haven't been in that space before. But it takes these people real time, energy, materials to make these things. And I know a number of people who have been able to make the leap to be a full-time artist, and it's really intimidating. It's a scary leap to make. Yeah. But that's part of why you need things like galleries and institutions to support an ecosystem where artists are able to do what they need to do. They're deserving of being compensated for what they're making and sharing with us. I've always felt like that's really important.
Did you, not to name names or be ugly, I'm curious, at UrbanArt, did you get pushback sometimes on the cost of projects and the cost of an artist?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we get it, and before I let you insight, we'll get it sometimes with journalists. People kind of think that all our journalists are they're really passionate about what they do, and they should do this because it supports the community, and payment is kind of secondary. And we're like, well, no, these people have families and student loans, and they want to live in a house, and no one's getting rich in journalism. But and then when you add in that we're a nonprofit, they're kind of like, well, but you guys are a nonprofit. Well, yeah, we're a nonprofit, but everyone's still got to eat and live and go on vacation and spend time with their family.
We have an office and equipment and
it's an interesting. But with the art world, I think it's even more so in musicians. But back to UrbanArt, you can name names if you want, but you must have gotten some pushback. Like, why would that cost so much?
Yeah, well, I won't name names, but that would happen. That would happen a lot. People will see something and be like, oh yeah, I want to do a big sculpture or mural at my office building or, this space that I own. And I'm like, cool, well, that mural's $30,000. Or if you want to have a sculpture installed, then you're really not looking at something less than $80,000 right now because of the literal cost of materials.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that, you know, that's where both at Sheet Cake and at UrbanArt Commission, there's a good part of what I do that I feel like is advocacy. You know, advocating on behalf of the artists, advocating for them to have the budgets that they need, the costs that they need to cover, and then also, especially in a commission context, making sure they have room to create the thing that they're there to do. So it's. I'm often helping translate, I feel like, between different spaces and things.
Right. Yeah. Right. Again, just a couple minutes left here with Lauren Kennedy, again, from Sheet Cake. Sheet Cake, the gallery, if you joined us late, is at 405 Monroe in the Edge District, opened in December. You can go to the website, just Google search for Sheet Cake, and you'll see what artists are there, what upcoming exhibits, and so on. But, and you mentioned this earlier, you're also doing some an installation with, I don't know if I'm saying that right, an installation with James Lee House?
Yeah. I was very excited to get to work with them. Really gorgeous Victorian bed and breakfast, not far from the gallery, that was originally like an early home to an early version of the Memphis College of Art before they ended up at Rust Hall in Overton Park. So the folks who own the space were just really keen to honor that history of the house and gave me a ton of room to bring in things that I felt good about being in the space, things that are very contemporary, but also honor the architecture and the design elements of a Victorian house. It was really fun to put together. I've got 41 pieces of art in there right now. We had a great reception for it recently.
That's Bill Townsend, right? Doesn't Bill own James Lee House or no?
I'm working with John and Mary Ellen Riley, and I know JW and Kathy Gibson are also
okay.
co-owners.
I'm thinking he owns
Ansdale.
That's right. Bill owns Ansdale and something else in Victoria Village, but not that one. That's right. Okay, that's all good. Again, before we go, because we're out of time. I want to remind everyone we interviewed Lakeisha Edwards, who's the new head of Urban Art, and talked more about the mission of that organization and art and really in many ways your legacy of what that has done and how that has kind of transformed the streetscape in so many parts of Memphis. And I personally love that. So thank you. But people can get that episode from a couple months ago wherever they get their podcast. But for you, I always try to ask people, what was your first concert?
It was NSYNC.
Nice.
Yeah.
In Little Rock?
In Little Rock.
Nice.
Yep. With my dad and my sister and a group of girlfriends. And the dads kind of came together and escorted this gaggle of teenage girls. And it was very sweet.
That's really good.
The no strings attached tour, to be specific.
Nice. Okay. That's really good. Mm-hmm. Again, thanks very much, Lauren Kennedy. Thank you for being here.
Thanks
People
for having me.
Check out Sheet Cake in the Edge District. And a reminder to everyone listening, it is Pledge Week for WYXR, so please do consider donating. You can become a member. You can do a recurring donation. You can do a one-off donation. Go to WYXR.org. Download the WYXR app. You can go and support nonprofit listener-supported radio. That is all the time we have this week, though. Again, a reminder, the Sidebar airs on WYXR 91.7 every Thursday at 11:30. If you missed any of the show, you can get the full podcast interview at WYXR, The Daily Memphian, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks very much, and we'll see you next week.